If it rains for 3 days straight, the first thing we worry about is laundry smell. If it rains for a week, a tiny ecosystem starts growing inside the shoe rack. If it rains for a month, people start quietly negotiating with the sky. Come on, just take one day off. But what if the rain lasted for 100 years? Not just 100 years, but 10,000 years of a permanently soaked sky? Rivers would change direction, forests would drown, and villages would disappear from the map. Now let's imagine something even stranger. What if rain changed the throne of Earth for almost 2 million years? This is not the plot of a disaster movie. About 230 million years ago, a real climate transformation happened on Earth. Scientists call this event the Carnian Pluvial episode. Put simply, Triassic Earth suddenly became much wetter. Of course, this does not mean the entire planet had the same rain every single day. More accurately, rainfall and humidity increased dramatically over millions of years. But for the animals living through it, it probably felt like the world was breaking, because land that had been desert yesterday was starting to become swamp today. And after that long wet age passed, the ruler of Earth had changed. The new ruler was not the strongest animal of the old world. It was a group of small, lightweight dinosaurs hiding at the edges. Today's story is not about dinosaurs being born powerful. It is about a broken world that happened to break in favor of dinosaurs. The story begins with a giant supercontinent called Pangaea. At that time, Earth's continents were mostly joined together. Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Americas were connected into one massive landmass. That may have been convenient for mapmakers, but it was rough for living things. The interior of Pangaea was extremely far from the ocean. Sea winds could not easily reach the center of the continent, so the central regions became extremely dry. Days were hot, nights were cold, and rain was rare. Put simply, Earth was running like one giant natural dryer. Plants were scarce, water was precious, and dust was weirdly committed to its job. Every time the wind blew, sand and dust swept across the land. In a world like this, a sip of water was not just water. It was a survival right. Even a patch of shade was valuable real estate. But even this harsh world had rulers on land. Surprisingly, those rulers were not the dinosaurs we know. The dominant land animals were powerful reptiles related to the crocodile line. They were the terrifying power players of the Triassic ecosystem. Some of them did not crawl low like modern crocodiles. They moved with their legs, held more under the body, and looked down on their prey. Imagine a crocodile that started going to the gym and then bought a suit. Nearby, a plant-eating reptile called a Rhynchosaur also flourished. It chewed tough plants with a parrot-like beak. Today, Rhynchosaurs are completely gone, but back then they were very common. In some regions, they made up a major share of land herbivores. Basically, they were regular residents of the Triassic landscape. Dicynodonts also walked across the land. They looked a little pig-like, but they belonged closer to the mammal side of the family tree. These animals ate, walked, reproduced, and filled the earth of that time. So where were the dinosaurs? Honestly, they were not sitting in the main character seat. Early dinosaurs were generally small, light, and very cautious animals. When a huge predator passed by, they had to quietly step aside. They were not at the center of the ecosystem. They survived on the edges. In school terms, they were not class president or even vice president. They were the quiet kids at the bottom of the attendance sheet waiting for their names to be called. In many places, dinosaurs were still a small part of the land ecosystem. But history sometimes makes side characters dangerous, because when the whole stage collapses, a side character can suddenly stand in the spotlight. The thing that collapsed the stage came from the sky as water, but the sky did not start the story. The real beginning came from fire rising deep inside Earth. Around 234 million years ago, enormous volcanic activity began. It was linked to the Wrangellia region, near what is now Western Canada and Alaska. Huge amounts of lava and volcanic gas were released. This was not the kind of volcano you compare to a small mountain behind town. This was more like Earth cranking the basement heater way too high. The lava was frightening, but the bigger problem was gas. Large amounts of carbon dioxide entered the atmosphere. Some research also discusses the possible release of methane. When greenhouse gases increase, Earth traps heat more effectively. It is like trying to sleep in the middle of summer under 3 heavy blankets. Earth did not just become warmer. Its entire water cycle started to overheat. Warmer oceans sent more water vapor into the atmosphere. Warm air can hold more moisture than cold air, so the sky became heavier and heavier. Clouds grew larger, and the behavior of the winds began to change. Moist air started pushing into the dry world of Pangaea. And then, at some point, the rain began. At first, it may have seemed like a blessing. In a desert, rain is always a welcome guest. Dry plants drank, and animals finally caught their breath. The problem was that this guest stayed far too long. The rain was not a visitor that came with a season and then left. Earth's climate system itself was changing direction. Dry ground could not properly absorb the sudden water. Water ran across the surface and dragged soil and sand with it. Small streams became creeks, and creeks became rivers. Ancient riverbeds that had slept for ages woke up again. Desert valleys filled with muddy water. Sand dunes collapsed, and plains turned into mud. The old, dry ecosystem began to tremble before the water. The first major changes happened in the plant world. Plants adapted to dry environments were slowly pushed back. Plants that could handle wetter conditions began spreading. Ferns and conifer-like plants took over new spaces. It was as if the ecosystem's menu had suddenly changed. The restaurant you visited every day had closed overnight. For Rhynchosaurs, this change was devastating. Their teeth and jaws were well suited for certain kinds of plants. But the familiar plants declined, and unfamiliar plants moved in. They were hungry, but they could no longer read the menu. When food changes, bodies have to change too. But evolution does not arrive as fast as a food delivery app. Animals that could not adapt began to decline slowly. Herds became smaller, and fewer young survived. Animals that had once been everywhere became harder to find. The old throne of the ecosystem began to shake. Other herbivores, including Dicynodonts, also came under pressure. Food change and habitat change arrived at the same time. A body that worked well in a desert became awkward in a swamp. Short, heavy legs were no longer an advantage in deep mud. When the world changes, yesterday's advantage can suddenly become dead weight. That is the frightening power of climate change. The strongest animal does not always survive. The animal that fits the new rules survives. While the rulers on land were struggling, the oceans were not safe either. More rain increased the weathering of rocks. Rivers carried nutrients and chemical materials from land into the sea. The oceans became warmer, and some regions became low in oxygen. Acidification and oxygen loss placed heavy stress on marine life. Animals that built shells were especially vulnerable. Corals and calcium carbonate organisms are highly sensitive to environmental change. The foundation of marine ecosystems began to shake. Clear seas slowly turned into a cloudy laboratory. For shell-building creatures, the ocean became less like a home and more like a dissolving wall. Scientists see this period as a major biological transition. Some organisms disappeared, while others found new opportunities. On land and in the sea, the old order was breaking apart. Now the stage had empty spaces. Predator roles opened up, and herbivore roles opened up. The structure of forests changed, and the types of food changed. And now, the key question appears. Who filled the empty spaces of this new world first? It was the small, unimpressive-looking dinosaurs. Dinosaurs did not suddenly become geniuses. They did not sign up for a gym membership either. They were simply more flexible. Some early dinosaurs could use many kinds of food. They ate plants, small animals, and insects. In a crisis, being picky about food is a luxury. They also had important advantages in body structure. Many dinosaurs had legs positioned directly beneath the body. This made movement more efficient than sprawling legs held out to the side. It helped them move more steadily through muddy and complicated terrain. Fast movement became a major advantage in a changing environment. Some dinosaur lineages also developed efficient breathing systems. This may have helped them handle stressful environments better. But this one trait was not the entire answer. Survival is almost always the result of several advantages stacking together. Small body size may have helped too. A small animal can survive longer on less food. When large animals starve, small animals can sometimes quietly endure. It is the sad economy mode of biology. Dinosaurs were small, fast, flexible, and ready to take chances. Most importantly, their competitors were disappearing. That combination changed history. As the old rulers fell, dinosaurs moved forward. At first, they probably moved cautiously. They would have taken the empty spaces one by one. The new forests had food. Ferns and conifers covered the ground. Insects flourished. And small animals increased. For dinosaurs, this was a massive invitation. Yesterday's side character had suddenly stepped into the center of the stage. The ecosystem was basically telling dinosaurs, "We have openings." And dinosaurs heard that message very clearly. Over time, dinosaurs became more diverse. Some dinosaurs became better adapted to plant-eating lifestyles. Others evolved as predators. Early predators like Herrerasaurus began to stand out in the New World. Lineages that would later lead toward sauropods also began walking the path toward longer and larger bodies. But the key point here is not size. The key point is that the direction had changed. Dinosaurs were no longer animals at the edge. They were moving toward the center of the ecosystem. The fascinating part is that this change is not just imagination. It is stamped into the ground. Scientists can see this shift in fossils and footprints. The footprint record from the Dolomites in Italy is especially important. In some older layers, dinosaur footprints appear only rarely, but in later layers, the share of dinosaur footprints increases sharply. This is a sign that dinosaurs were becoming important in real ecosystems. When you look at the numbers, it becomes even more striking. In some studied regions, dinosaurs went from rare players to major members of the community. We cannot reduce the entire planet to one simple number, but the direction of change is clear. The Age of Rain opened an opportunity for dinosaurs. Dinosaurs were not lucky princes born to rule. They were survivors who adapted inside a collapsing world. Nature does not choose the nicest main character. Nature hands empty space to whatever is ready. And sometimes, that empty space is created by disaster. After the Rain Age passed, Earth was no longer the same. The dry desert world had become wetter and more complex. Forests spread, rivers flowed, and ecosystems were rebuilt. The old rulers were no longer as powerful as before. Dinosaurs could now spread across the continents. After this, dinosaurs became Earth's signature land animals for about 150 million years. Of course, not every dinosaur became giant right away. Tyrannosaurus and Brachiosaurus were stories for much later. But the door to the dynasty opened here. The opportunity seized by small dinosaurs became the beginning of a gigantic age. But there was another small side character in this story: our extremely distant mammal ancestors. Even while dinosaurs were rising, the ancestors of mammals existed too. They were generally small and cautious animals. The world was far too dangerous for them to roam around in large bodies during the day. As dinosaurs grew more dominant, small mammal relatives were pushed into the shadows. So mammal ancestors learned how to live small. They moved at night, hid in burrows, and survived on tiny meals. This was not a glamorous life. It was basically a 150 million year night shift. But in survival, persistence sometimes matters more than dignity. Under the feet of dinosaurs, small mammals kept enduring. Their inability to grow large looked like a weakness. But later, that smallness became a weapon. About 66 million years ago, an asteroid fell from the sky. That massive impact flipped Earth's ecosystems again. Dust and soot covered the sky, and sunlight weakened. Plants declined, and food chains collapsed. The larger an animal was, the more energy it needed. Many non-bird dinosaurs could not survive that disaster. But small animals had a different strategy: eat less, hide better, and move through darkness. Mammal ancestors were already used to that kind of life. Sadly, they had been training for hardship for a very long time. After the dinosaurs disappeared, the world was empty again. And this time, mammals took the open spaces. Small animals became larger and more diverse. Some lineages climbed into trees and became primates. Life in the trees changed eyes and hands. Forward-facing eyes helped them judge distance and depth. Precise fingers helped them grip branches and fruit. Later, those hands would hold stones and make tools. After much more time passed, some primates came down to the ground. They walked on two legs and freed their hands. They broke stones, controlled fire, and shared stories. Eventually, Homo sapiens appeared. And now we are watching this ancient rain story on smartphones. Strange, isn't it? Rain from 230 million years ago is connected to you right now. That rain lifted the dinosaurs, and dinosaurs kept mammals small. That small life became a survival strategy after the asteroid. Mammals survived, primates appeared, and humans emerged. What if Wrangellia's volcanic activity had never happened? What if the Age of Rain had never arrived? What if dinosaurs had missed their opportunity? What if the asteroid had missed Earth? Maybe you would not be here watching this video. The history of life works like a giant chain of dominoes. When one piece falls, a future nobody expected can open. Scientists only began to understand this event relatively recently. Rock layers, fossils, footprints, and carbon records provided the clues. At first, some traces looked like local changes. But gradually, more evidence pointed toward a global climate transition. The Carnian Pluvial episode was not just a story about rain. It was a major turning point that helped prepare the dawn of modern ecosystems. Some modern-style reef ecosystems also became important after this period. Several reptile and marine lineages changed in new ways. Earth erased old ecosystems and experimented with new ones. And the most famous winner of that experiment was the dinosaur. Here is the core lesson of today's story. Survival is not decided by strength alone. Sometimes flexibility lasts longer than power. Sometimes being small is safer than being huge. Sometimes the creature hiding in the corner becomes the ruler of the next age. Dinosaurs were not kings from the beginning. Mammals were not future heroes from the beginning either. Both were once quiet survivors, waiting in the background. Earth's history can look like an autobiography written by winners. But when you look closely, it is a record of side characters who lasted long enough. So the next time it rains, the sky may feel a little different. Today's raindrop may be just water, but an ancient raindrop once changed the throne of Earth. That rain turned deserts into swamps. That rain pushed out the old rulers. That rain opened the road for dinosaurs. And in the far future, it opened a road for us too. Of course, rain today will not suddenly bring dinosaurs back. Forgetting your umbrella does not mean the Triassic has started again. But it does matter that climate can change the direction of life. Climate change in the past shook entire ecosystems. Climate change today also asks us a question. How flexible can we be in a changing world? Will we harden like the old rulers? Or can we read opportunity like the small dinosaurs did? History does not predict the future perfectly, but it does become a mirror that makes us think about it. 230 million years ago, Earth rewrote the world with rain. And at the end of that sentence, dinosaurs appeared. Under the feet of dinosaurs, mammals quietly waited. When the asteroid came, that waiting became an opportunity. At the end of that long chain, there is humanity. So the next time rain falls, look up for a moment. That drop is small, but Earth's memory is enormous.